Hi guys, today we're going to work on representing proportional relationships. So previously in the last lesson we discussed how to use graphs to help us represent proportional relationships and how to identify things using the graph and the constant of proportionality on the graph. That is one way to represent proportional relationships, is the graphs. But first let's review what the constant of proportionality is. Remember that the constant of proportionality is k in the equation y equals kx. And the constant of proportionality is how we measure the change from each step to the next, or the rate of change. So the other way you may hear it referred to as rate of change. Sometimes even you hear it as unit rate. They're all within the same term. The constant of proportionality tells us how much between each individual item. To calculate the constant of proportionality, you'll remember that the formula is k equals y divided by x. All right, so let's move forward. Graphs is one form of finding the constant of proportionality and representing an equation or a proportion. The other way is through equations. Equations can help us by the way they express the constant of proportionality, and that goes back to the y equals kx. In an equation, the constant of proportionality is expressed to us via that k symbol, or whatever is multiplying the x. So let's try it. So here's our problem. Jada and Noah counted the number of steps they took to walk a set distance. To walk the same distance, Jada took 8 steps and Noah took 10. They found out that when Noah took 15 steps, Jada took 12. So let's represent this situation. We're going to start with a graph. In order to represent it as a graph, the very first thing we're going to do is create a table with at least 3 sets of values. So we already know 2 of the values. We know 8 and 10, 15 and 12. So let's do 8 and 10, 15. This should have been 12 here, sorry. 12 and 15. Now that we know those 2 sets, we can start using those to help us predict what another set would be. And we can either go a set up or we can go a set down. I'm going to show you both ways. Well, the distance between 8 and 12 is 4. And the distance between 10 and 15 is 5. So that means if I want to go down a step, I'm going to subtract 4. 8 minus 4 is 4. And I'm going to subtract 5 from 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. If I want to go up, I'm going to do 12 plus 4, which is 16. And 15 plus 5, which is 20. So now I have my 3 sets of values. So now I can move to the next step. So the next step is to take my values and graph it. So first I have to label my axes. So I'm going to put Jada's steps here. So this is Jada and its steps. This is how many steps she took. And then I'm going to put Noah's steps over here. So this is Noah and his steps. Okay, if you notice, Jada's are even numbers, so I'm going to go up by 2s here. I'm going to do 2, 4, 6, 8, and then I'm going to do 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. All right, so now I'm going to do Noah's. Noah's are going up by 5, so I'm going to make my scale 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to plot my 4 points I have here. So I'm going to do 4 and 5 is point number 1. Point number 2 is 8 and 10. Point number 3 is 12 and 15. And point number 4 is 16 and 20. And I could continue plotting them if I wanted, but I'm just going to graph my line now. Okay, and so there's my line. Now that I have my line and I've made my graph, I can find the constant in proportionality in the distance from one dot to another. So the distance from this dot to this dot is 5 divided by 4. The distance from this dot to this dot is also 5 divided by 4. So my constant of proportionality is 5 over 4. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So now let's talk about graphing it using equations. All right, so let's look at how to do the equation. The first step of the equation is to find the constant of proportionality, and the second step is to write it. So let's do the first step. Remember the formula for constant of proportionality is k equals y divided by x. If we decided that Jada's steps were x and Noah's steps were y, we then need to plug in either of the sets of steps. I could do either 12 and 15 or 8 and 10. Doesn't matter. I'm going to use 8 and 10. So since Noah is 10, because he's y, then Jada is 8. So it's going to be 10 over 8. I can reduce 10 over 8 by taking 2 out of each. So I'm going to divide 10 by 2, which is 5. And I'm going to divide 8 by 2, which is 4. I can't reduce 5 over 4 any more than that. So I have my constant of proportionality, which is 5 over 4. Now I can write the equation, which is k equals, that's up here, y equals 5 over 4x. Because remember the equation for proportional lines is y equals kx. And since we found out what k is, we're going to plug it in. And now we have y equals 5 over 4x. So now we have represented this problem using an equation. So let's move to the next part. All right, looking at the graph of our equation, let's talk about where we can find the proportionality of each. So the constant proportionality in an equation is super easy. It's right here. It's whatever number is multiplying by x. However, in the graph, it's a little bit harder. The constant of proportionality is going to be found in what is the steepness, the distance from one point to another. So 5 over 4 is our distance here. 5 over 4 is our distance here. So those are our constant of proportionalities. It's either there or it's in that distance from one point to another. So now let's explain how I can tell that the graph and the table represent the same situation. Well, one way I can tell is that the constant of proportionality is the same. I can see that this is up 5 over 4 and this says 5 over 4. The other way I could tell is if I plugged in numbers. Let's do 8 and 10 since we know 8. If I plug in 8 here, it's going to equal 10. So if I look up here and go up to 8, it should equal 10. So if I plug in 8 and do 8 times 5 over 4, my equation should still equal 10. So if I cross reduce, 5 times 2 is 10 over 1, which is 10. So I can tell that they represent the same thing because the numbers that I'm plugging in or checking match the same and our constant of proportionality is the same. All right, so let's move on to an example problem. These are the problems that you guys worked on as a group. We're going to go over them individually now. All right, so let's work on problem 1 here. It says sketch a graph that shows the relationship between grams of honey and cups of flour needed for a bakery recipe. Show on the graph how much 17 cups of flour is worth. Okay, so our grams of honey is going to be our x, our cups of flour are y, so we're going to start by writing our equation. Remember the formula to find the constant of proportionality is going to be y divided by x. So I can pick either of my y's, whichever one I want, and I'm going to plug it in. So I'm going to do k equals 10 divided by 45. Now I'm going to simplify it. I can take 5 out of both of 10 and 45. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 45 divided by 5 is 9. So that's my constant of proportionality. So my equation is y equals 2 over 9, x. Now that I have my equation, I can set up my graph. All right, so honey is going to be my x, and flour is going to be my c. Remember for my graph, I have to have a minimum of 3 different slots. So I have 27 here, and 6, 45, and 10. And then it already gives me what it wants my other point to be, which is 17 for my y right here. So now, in order to get it, I'm going to take 17 and plug it in for y to figure out what that is. Go ahead and try that now. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in 17 for y. So 17 goes here, equals 2 over 9x. Center of my equation is the equal sign. I have to get x by itself, so I have to get rid of the 2 over 9. Since 2 is multiplying by x, I need to divide by 2. And since 9 is dividing by x, I need to multiply by 9, or multiply by the reciprocal, 9 over 2. Anything I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so 9 over 2. I'm going to put this over 1. I can't simplify any of this, so I'm just going to do 17 times 9. Okay, 9 times 7 is going to be 63. Carry the 6. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 6 is 153. So then I have 153 over 2 equals x. In order to make that easier for me to read for grams of honey, I'm going to divide that out, and I'm going to do 153 divide 2. 2 goes into 1 0 times, but 2 goes into 15 7. Minus 14 is going to be 1. Bring down the 3. 2 goes into 13 6 times. That's going to leave 1 left over. So it's 76 and 1 over 2, or 76 and a half. So now we need to get started on graphing. We know that flour or honey here is our x, and flour is our y. Now, if we look at what our constant of proportionality tells us, it tells us that our x is increasing by 9 each time. So I'm going to make my scale here by 9s. 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81, 90, 99, 108, so forth. Then my x's are going up by 2, so I'm going to do, well, if I look, my x's are going up by 2, so I'm going to do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 28. So my first point is 6 and 27, so I've got to go, or 27 and 6, so I've got to go to 27, which is right here, and 6, draw my first point. And then it's 45 and 10, so I got to go to 45 and 10, draw my second point. And then it's 17 and 76 and a half and 17. So 76 and a half is going to be directly between 72 and 81. And then 17 is going to be directly between 16 and 18. So there's my point. I now can draw my line. Hopefully your line's a little straighter than mine. Mine was not very straight. And there's your line on the graph. All right, if you need to pause this, please do so. We're going to go on to problem number 2. All right, so let's go over our last practice problem. This time it says sketch a graph that shows the relationship between the grams of salt and the cups of flour. It gives us x and y. Needed for our baking recipe, then show 23 cups of flour. All right, so here's our x, here's our y. Remember, first thing we have to do is find k. And the formula for k is k equals y divided by x. So I have to take a y and divide it by x. So I'm going to pick 10 and 25. And I'm going to do 10 over 25 because flour is my y and salt is my x. I can reduce them both by taking 5 out of both of them. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 25 divided by 5 is 5. That makes my constant of proportionality 2 over 5, which makes my equation y equals 2 over 5x. So now I need to form my table. So here's my salt, and here is my flour. and my flour is Y. All right, so now I'm going to make my table. I've got 10, I've got 25, I've got 4, I've got 10, and I need to know 23 cups of flour here, okay? So since 23 is in the Y side, I'm going to plug it in for Y, so that's 23 equals 2 over 5x. Center of my equation is the equal sign. Since it's multiplied by 2 and divided by 5 to make 2 over 5, I have to do the opposite, or multiply by the reciprocal, which is multiplying by 5, dividing by 2. Okay? Thing I do to one side, I have to do the other. Put it over 1 once again. There's nothing to cross reduce here, so I'm going to start with 23 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So that's 115 over 2 is equal to x. So now let's divide it out. It's 115, 2. 2 goes into 1 0 times, but 2 goes into 10. 5 times minus 10 gives me 1. Bring the 5 down. 2 goes into 15 7 times. Minus 14 gives me 1 remaining. So x is equal to 57 1/2. Now I can go ahead and graph these. I'm going to put salt here on the bottom. I'm going to put flour here on the side. Based off my constant of proportionality, I can see that my salt, or my x's, are going up by 5s. So I'm going to use 5s here on the bottom, and I'm going to do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65. Then on the sides here, I'm going to go up by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 28. Now I'm going to graph my points. My first point is 10, 4. So I go to 10 here and put a point at 4. My second point is 25, 10. So I'm going to go to 25 and put a point at 10. And my third point is 57 1/2 and 23. 57 1/2 is in between 55 and 60. And 23 is in between 22 and 24. So there's going to be my point there. And now I'm going to draw the point on the graph. All right. Oops. And there's my point. All right, now that you guys are done with this, you can go on to make sure you completed the proportional relationships and percents, PFA. Have a good day, guys.